Hi and welcome to the CodeIgniter Screencast. This is the first one that I'm doing. My name's Elliot Hoffin and you can find my website at hoffin.com. That's HAUGHIN.com. Now, over the next course of these screencasts, I'm going to be showing you how to build up a basic content management system using CodeIgniter. So to start off with, let's get the default install of CodeIgniter. I've downloaded this from the CodeIgniter site and it's just extracted onto my desktop. So you should end up with a directory something like this. Now I'm just going to copy the contents and place this in a web accessible folder that I've already set up. So this is a directory within my sites directory that macOS uses for the web server. So let me just open up that directory now, and as we can see, the default install of CodeIgniter is working fine. Now I'm just going to also do something else. I'm going to move the system directory to just outside of the application directory just outside of the system directory. Now that just allows a little bit more separation, and it's just the way that I prefer to do it. I'm also going to get rid of the user guide since I don't need that right now. Okay, so here we go. This is the install that we're going to be using, so let's just hop up a level and put that folder onto TextMate, my text editor. Now you can use whatever text editor you like. I highly recommend TextMate if you're using a Mac, it's really good. Let me just close some of these. Right. Okay, so as you can see, the default install is still working. Now let's get down to some of the basic configuration. So we're just going to open up the application directory and the config directory, and in there there's a file called config.php. Now there's only a few things that I'll need to change in here to start off with. The first one is my default URL, my base URL, sorry. And I'm going to be just setting that up to this directory here, which is the one that you can see in the address bar. And the only other thing that I need to change is short tag rewrites, because my PHP install doesn't include short tags because I haven't enabled it yet. So what I'm going to do is go right down at the bottom and say rewrite short tags is true. You'll see where that comes in useful later on. Okay, so onto the database configuration. Now I'm going to just set up a basic database at the moment. So I'm on localhost is my host, root is my username, and password's empty. I'm going to create a new database called CIDB, and I'm going to prefix everything in there with CI. So let me save that and set up the database. Okay, so I'm going to go through to my database administration, which I'm using phpMyAdmin, and create a new database called CIDB as I named in the config file. Great. Now that's set up, I'm going to create a new table called pages, but because I've said the prefix is CI, I need to do CI underscore pages. Oh, pages, there we go. 10 fields. Okay, so the fields that I'm going to set up for a page are going to be an ID, which is an integer, and this is a primary key that gets auto assigned. Now I'm also going to have a path. It's 100 characters, variable character, and that needs to be indexed. Now we're going to have a title, a menu title, now the title and the menu titles are different, so that if you have navigation you may call the title something different in the navigation than when actually displaying on the page. And the other thing I'm going to set up on here is a body, which is just going to be text, and an active, which is a boolean. Now active will need to be indexed. Okay, so let's just save that. And there we go, we have a basic database with one table called CI pages and a database structure. Now while I'm here, just to make it a bit simpler, I'm going to insert a sample page. So the sample page I'm going to insert is called home, and I'm going to say that the title is welcome to my site, and the menu title is just home because we don't want that big long title displayed in a menu. And the body, so I'm just going to say this is my groovy CI screencast homepage. Okay, and active is 1 for this obviously. So let's just press go, and now we already have a record, so that's great. I could have used the CodeIgniter scaffolding to create the record, but since I'm already in PHPMyAdmin, I may as well create it here. Now let me just go back to our install. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up the auto load page, and I'm going to auto load a few things. So database, I'm going to need the database class to access the pages, and I'm also going to use the URL helper later on, so I'll just pop them in now. Okay, so CodeIgniter, of course, is a model view controller. So one of the first things that we'll need to sort out is just a controller for our module. Now, I'm going to delete the default one, which is the welcome one, and I'm also going to delete the default view. Great, now let's just set up a new file called pages.php. Now this is going to be the pages controller. So I'm going to put in there the basic controller. So all it is just a class called the same as your controller, and it extends the controller, and then you have a function called pages, and within that function I'm just going to call the parents constructor like that. So that is a basic controller, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to add one function, which is the index function, and this is just simply going to die an error message that says here. So now then we'll know when we get to it, we just see an error message, well, just a message that says here. I'm just going to delete some of this spacing that I don't need and save it. Now, because we've deleted the welcome controller, we need to tell our roots file what the default controller is, and this is the new one that we've just created called pages. Okay, so hopefully if you're following along, you should have what I have now. I'm just going to go to where that is on the where accessible side, and we can see we have the message that says here. So this controller is being loaded fine, and the index function is being loaded. That's great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to discuss briefly about the structure of this module. So this module is going to be for displaying informational pages like the home page, the about us page, you know, basic information, nothing fancy. So let me just put on index.php there, and it's the same thing. Now let's imagine you have a page called about us. Now what would be nice is to have a URL, something similar to about us, right? But because of the way that CodeIgniter works as default, the URL should be something like pages/view/about us, because pages is the controller, view is the function within the controller, and about us is the identifier to that item, the entity that we want. So what we really need to do is come up with a way of shortening them URLs down to straight out about us, and we can do that quite easily using the roots. So after I've already declared the default controller and the scaffolding trigger, which we're going to have as blank for now, all I need to do is I just need to say that I just need to put in a little root that's a regular expression that routes everything to pages/index/whatever we want. So every request that we send will go to the pages controller and the index function. So that's it. Now when we run this about us, we should still get here because we're still getting routed to the pages class. So that's great, that's working fine. Let me just close that down. So now that every request is getting pushed here, we can actually use the information that's sent to us in the address bar to pull different pages out. Let me just show you. I'm going to just put in this URI segment 1. So instead of showing the error message that says here, I'm just going to show inside the page what we've typed in the address bar. So there we go. We can now use that information to pull stuff out of the database. Okay, so what happens if we don't put in well, I'll start off just doing the basic structure. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say path equals whatever we type in the URI segment at the top. So that's the first one. We could also do URI R segment, which is a routed segment, and we use the number 3 for that. Now that is because we set in the roots that we wanted to go to pages/index/1. under the r-segment method, we use the third parameter here, this third bit. But I'm just going to stick with the kind of the normal way of doing it, which is to do the normal URI segment. Okay, so the path is that. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of a query. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to use the active record. I'm just going to say this DB where, first of all, let's just say that the path has to be the same as the path that we've entered in the URI. And of course, active needs to be true. Now query is simply just getting some record from the pages table. Now notice how I haven't added CI_pages, which is the full database table, because I've already set that in the prefix, so we just forget that that exists. And we only want one page, so there. So that's a basic query that's going to pull some pages, but we need to then display some information about the page when we get it. So I'm just going to say if the query has more than one row returned. So if we do manage to get a page, then I'm just going to say that the page is the row array. So I'm just assigning the variable page to the results, just an array of the result. Now I'm just going to see if we've got that. I'm going to just show print_r page. Now that'll just print out the page that we've managed to find from the database. So when we refresh this, nothing should happen because it's not managing to find a page where the path equals this. Let me just go over to the database again. So as you can see in our pages table, when I browse, it's looking for a record where the path column is whatever we type in the top of here. So if we change that to home, we should get a page, which we've got there. Great, so we know that the query is working, but now we need to take some precautions to if we don't have things set. So for example, what happens if we don't put in a URI segment? Well, astonishingly, we managed to get a record, but I'm not sure how. Where path is path. Let me just see what it's assigning there. Nothing. Let me just see what the query is. Select all where path equals 0. Okay, I'm not sure exactly why that's doing that. I'm sure someone will comment regarding it, but the way that I was going to do it was this. I'm just going to say if the path can't be set from the URI segment, then path is home. So I'm just going to say if it can't find it there, then we're going to set ourselves to home. And if we still can't find it after if we have no rows, then I'm just going to die a little error message that says 404. So there we have the home page. There we have a 404 because we can't find this page. Now let's start to actually do something with the page that we've got. So we've got this variable here that says page, and we need to somehow display that. So I'm going to use the view files. Now, one way of doing it would be just to load a view file called index.php, for example, and send everything from there to the index page. But then things can get quite awkward because you might have a pages module, you might have news, you might have blog, you might have all kinds of different stuff, and you're going to end up with a views folder that's got loads and loads and loads of views in with no real logical order. So I'm just going to show you how I order my views. First of all, I'll create a folder called front and a folder called back. Now these are for views for the front end and the back end of the sites. Now I'm just going to concentrate on the front end. I'm going to create a directory called modules and a directory called layout. And then this index.php, I'll use that and I'll actually just rename it to loader.php. Now, quite simply, the loader file, at the moment it's empty. I'm just going to put in a few little directives here that just say to load, first of all, the view, and I'm going to load the front layout file called header, and I'm going to load the one called footer. Quite nice and simple. In the layout folder here, I'm just going to add those files, and I'm just going to add some HTML. I'm just going to cheat and I'm going to use the HTML tidy that comes with TextMate. There we go. So there's the header file, and now I'm going to create a new footer file, and the first thing I'm going to do is put the end body and the end HTML tags in there. And there we go, so there's the footer file. So them two files will automatically be wrapped around whatever we put in the middle of here. Now this is the important part that I'll come on to in a moment, so I'll just put in the commands that I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm going to dynamically be pulling a view file in here, and let me show you how I'll do that. So first of all, let's go to our controller, and up here in the constructor I'm just going to set a few variables. First of all, I'm going to create one called this table is pages. Now this is the database table that I'll use right throughout the whole controller. I'm just going to replace this manual one to the overall variable. That way, if ever I change the database name, I just change it once at the top of the constructor and the whole class follows. And I'm just going to also set some variables for this template. Okay, so this template is an array that runs right through the controller, and I'm going to say that the module is pages. Now I could have done this dynamically by doing something like string to lower of get class and this, which would have pulled the same thing in, but it's just a bit too much. Why waste all those processor cycles, eh? So sorry, I forgot that happens. Let's just pad this out. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a function called run, and it's going to specify a view file. I'll go into this in a moment on what that does, but first of all I need to make sure that instead of using this local variable just called page, I'm going to say that this template page is query. So I'm assigning everything that I need to send to the view file needs to go in this variable called this template. And it's very important that that works in this way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I need to run a view file now, and the view file that I want to run is just going to be called single page. Now as you can see, single page is a variable that's accepted up here in the run function. Now the basic principle of the run function is just to load the loader view, which already wraps the header and the footer and then loads the center content, but we need to tell the template what the center content is. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to assign to the template variable view whatever view we get sent. So far we should have a module, we should have a view file, and we should have some content that we can use in that individual view file. And then I'm going to use the load function to load the variables this template. Now this will get all of the items within this template, and it'll assign them to their own variables, which is how we can use them here. So module should actually be this template module, but I've run that through this load vars, and that will automatically assign it to this. Now it might seem a bit kind of complex when you start setting this up, but once it's in place, the procedure is very simple. So that's it. I'm just going to say this template page is create row array, this run a single page, and then when we go to the single page, that will load that into the view, load the variables up, and send it all off to the loader. Now the only thing that we're missing is the actual view files, because if you look here, it's going to load front/module/module, which in our case is pages. So I need to create a directory here called pages, and then it's going to load the view file that we said. So here we need to load a page called single page.php. And for now, I'm just going to put a little h2 tag in there. It says hi there. Now I appreciate that we haven't done much in the way of looking at how that works, but let me just show you now. So there, when we load it up, it's going to put /home on the end for us because we haven't specified. Oh, sorry, let me just get this side out. PHP. There we go. So it's going to put /home on the end for us. But then once it's found the page, it's going to assign that to the template under the variable page. Then it's going to run that view file. So here we can actually access the page through the variable page, just like that. So instead of writing hi there, let me just try doing this. Just going to do an echo statement. This is a short echo statement. I'm going to echo the page title. Oh, there we go. Welcome to my site. Really simple. And now that I've done that, may as well carry on. I'm just going to echo the page body inside of a paragraph tag. Well, there we go. That was quite nice and simple. Let me just test it by adding another record in the database. I'm going to add about us. Oh, not about us. And let me add that to the database. There we go. So now, if we don't put anything on, we get the home page. If we put on home, we get the home page. If we put about us, we get the about us page. Now, as you can see, it looks really basic at the moment because there's no styling information, but already we have a really powerful method of accessing pages with a very friendly URL. Bearing in mind that normally index.php wouldn't be there because we'd also remove that, but I haven't gone into that this screencast. So that's a very basic kind of structure to making a CMS. And finally, all I'm going to show you is just some dynamic routing. Now, the main problem is, just say we have a controller called news. When we access news, it's actually sending us to the pages controller, which is where this message comes from. Now, we don't want to do that. We want it to work out whether we have a pages, a news module, a news controller. So I'm just going to create news.php. I'm going to copy everything in there for now and just paste it in because I'm lazy, and just change this to news. Now this can all stay exactly the same. The only thing we're going to do is I'm just going to take all the stuff out of the index function and put a message in it instead. So there's a basic news controller, but we still can't access that from here. We should be getting a message that says news, but we can't get it. So the problem is because we're writing everything to the pages controller, it's not getting through to the news. So there's a few ways around this that I've thought about, and this is one method of doing it. Now, one method of doing it would be to access the directory, the controllers directory, then loop through every file that isn't index.html and pages.php and add them into an array that I'll show you now. Let me just show you how I'm going to do it. I'm going to create up just a variable called installed modules, and that's an array. Now in install modules, for now I'm just going to install news and say block. Simple. Now I've hard coded that array, but you could instead of doing it like this, you could do you could access the directory and then list the contents of the directory using PHP, and then loop through it and exclude index.html and pages.php. Then delete, add it to the array, excluding the .php extension. It's quite a complex method, but I might do that in the next version of this screencast and get it work. Test it out, get a procedure working, and show you how to do it. But for now, this is all I'm going to do. I'm just going to say for each. Let me just do that like that. Installed modules as module. So I'm going to loop through this array, and I'm going to dynamically build routes based on it. So first of all, I'm going to say that route for just accessing the module. I'll put some comments here so you can see an example. So first of all, if we access just like that, then I'm going to say that we need to go to module slash, oh no, just module, that's all we need. And then if we access something like news slash view slash hello me, something like that, then we need to also send all them requests. So I'm going to say that route for the module, sorry, that needs to be singular, is first of all we're going to send it to the module, and then whatever we type in afterwards with a slash. So module slash dot dash, do it. So there we go. If you access module slash and then anything on the end, or nothing on the end for that matter, but with a trailing slash, we then force that request over to module and then whatever they put in there. So now when I access the news, it's correctly getting to the news, but if I access news 2, that will send us to the pages directory because that module doesn't actually exist. And if we access the blog, CodeIgniter can't find the controller for it, which is perfect. It's working exactly as we need it to. Now, this might not be the most elegant approach, but it seems to work quite well. And all you need to do is when you add a new controller and a new module, you just simply add the record to the array. Or as I might show in the next screencast, we'll dynamically build this array. So there we go. That's a basic introduction to building a CodeIgniter driven CMS. As you can see, we're pulling pages out of the database. Next week I'm going to go into a little bit of user logins, administration, and building that array of modules dynamically so that we don't have to mess around manually. As soon as you create a controller, all the URLs map over to that perfectly. Okay, thank you for watching. You can find my website at hoffin.com, which is www.hoffin.com. Sorry, let me not put 4 W's on there. And my file sharing site, which is filepanda.com. Filepanda's driven entirely by CodeIgniter, and it's coming along quite well. Anyway, thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.